He's back! Hello everyone, Danny here today with 2 reviews and an update. I'm going to put my coffee cup down there before I spill it. So, new hat too. Yeah, love this hat. Anyhow, it's been a couple of months since I posted a video. And there are 2 reasons for that. The first reason is I went through a bit of a dry spell. And as anyone who's been on my channel for a while knows, about a year ago, I got moved out of the trucks from behind the wheel to behind a desk where I'm now doing computerized central dispatching for my company. Still consider myself a truck driver, which is why I still wear hats everywhere. Love a good trucker hat. I mean, come on, who can't love that? But I no longer have the time just sitting there listening to audiobooks. When I was driving truck, I'd blow through 4 to 6, 8 audiobooks a week. It was easy. Even if I hit a dry spell, it was easy to overcome that dry spell. Now with the job that I've got right now, it's not so easy to overcome the dry spells. When I hit a dry spell where I just get books and I'm like, I don't even want to talk about that book, which is what happened. I had a lot of do not finishes. I posted 1 video in my lifetime about a do not finish, and a fan of that book got on there and pointed out that he felt like I hadn't really given the book a chance since I quit it early, and it wasn't fair for me to criticize that author when I didn't even listen to his entire book. And I understood his point, and his point made sense, and so I just kind of made it a rule. I will not talk about books that I do not finish. If I'm not willing to complete the entire book, then I have no right to talk about it as far as I'm concerned. So I had a lot of do not finishes. I had a couple of honorable mentions. There will be 2 books that I will talk about here that were good enough that I could have posted videos about them. But at that time, I didn't really feel like I had enough to say about them to complete an entire video. And I was enjoying a little mini vacation. Also, I have an annual listen. Every single year around the holiday season, I listen to the Harry Potter series. Start with book 1, go through to book 7. It is just, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. It used to be my absolute favorite book series. Not so much anymore, but it's still up there, and it's tied with a couple other book series for my favorite book series. I no longer have 1, I now have like a few, which is what happens as you expand your horizons. But the combination of those 2 things just took me out for a while. Now I've listened to an absolutely amazing book by an author that I was worried about. One of my favorite authors, Kel Cade, decided to branch out and do a new series. And as is the worry, when you have an author who only has 1 series, and it is like an amazing series, and then they announce that they're going to branch out and go with a new series, the worry is, can that author hit the same level with this new series that he did with the old series, or is he going to fall flat? Is he going to be a 1-series wonder? Next week's video, I will talk about that book. I'm not going to do it in this video. This is a catch-up video. So you'll have to tune in next week, which, by the way, if you like audiobooks, if you like this video, you like my channel, please subscribe, turn on notifications, come join me in my audiobook journey. Now, during this period of dry spells, there were 2 books that I do feel like I need to mention. One of them I promised I would talk about again, and that is Michael Meyerhofer's Knightswrath. It's the Dragonkin series book 2. Last video I posted was on the Dragonkin series book 1, and I told you in that book that due in large part to the narration, I was going to wait for book 2 to decide whether this was a series I was going to continue. This is not a series I'm going to continue, at least in audiobook. I'm debating getting the series in written format. When I was driving truck, I didn't have any time to actually sit and read, which is why I got into audiobooks. Here's the thing with audiobooks, though. What I love about audiobooks is they allow you to be listening to a really good book while you're doing something else. So I can be at work and the phones are quiet, everything's quiet. I'm running reports. I'm checking people's dispatches, looking for mistakes, making sure nothing is wrong. And I have an audiobook playing in the background. The audiobook gets half my attention. What I'm doing gets half my attention, and it only requires half my attention because it's routine stuff that I do 12 hours a day, 3 to 4 days a week, because that's my schedule. I work 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off, 3 on. Every weekend's either I work 3 days or I have a 3-day weekend. I love this schedule. I have free time now, which means I also have time to read. So the problem with this series, and it continued from book 1 to book 2, it actually got worse. So book 1, I had a hard time following it because there's several storylines going at the same time, and it would switch between storylines with no break, no warning, no nothing. And you'd get partway down and wait, what? Hold on. Who's talking? Where am I at? And what? And rewind. If I was able to sit there and just sit still, totally focus and listen. Okay, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to focus 100% of my attention on this audiobook. I could follow the storyline. Why would I want to do that with an audiobook? That's not the purpose of an audiobook. It doesn't require 100%. That's actually boring. There's a difference between sitting still, reading a book and focusing on a book you're reading, and listening to a book, and that's the only thing you're doing. And that actually gets boring. For me, at least. It might not be that way for other people, but it gets that way for me. So I had to force myself to finish this book. I finally had to decide, you know what? I'm going to stop rewinding. If I lose where I'm at, if I lose the storyline, I lose it. And hopefully the rest of the story will catch me up. And I did finish the entire book. I then returned those first 2 books to Audible. I get all my books through Audible, which I love because if I'm not happy with something, I can return. And I've done a lot of returns here lately. Never any grief, never any problem, never any hassle. I returned both those books. However, I was able to follow and listen to enough of the book to know that I actually think I really like this series and I am interested in this series. So I'm thinking it may be something where I get it in print and I listen to the print version of the book series. Book 2 gets a little bit darker than book 1. As far as adult content in this book, it's definitely there. You've got one of the main characters who's naked throughout the book. They talk about things like rape and torture and stuff like that. So it is not a book for children by any stretch of the imagination. And if you've watched many of my videos, you know I don't like my books too dark. A book that gets too dark is a book I don't enjoy. This one, from what I could tell, what I heard of the story, it walked that fine line for me. It stayed light enough that I enjoyed it, but at the same time was right. This would be one of the darker books that I would enjoy, and it's because of that element of torture and repression and sexual assault that is definitely a part of this book and this series, and seems to be getting worse as the book goes on. It's making the bad guys real, true bad guys. The narrator, Craig Beck. I don't know if this is a writing problem. I think it's actually a narration problem. I talked about this in my review of book 1, that Craig Beck was a narrator I had not heard of, and I did not know if he was a brand new narrator. I went ahead and looked him up. He has 285 books on Audible, so he is not a brand new narrator. However, if you look through the list of his audiobooks, the vast majority of them, in fact, I didn't look at every single book he had, but the 3 or 4 pages of books that I looked at were all nonfiction books. And so maybe that's, he's not a new narrator, but he's new to nonfiction, or new to fiction, excuse me, new to fiction, new to fantasy, and so doesn't know how to break the storyline up so you can follow it. Either way, the real knock I have with that is it is a book that you have to give all of your focus to, and if you can't give all of your focus to, you're going to lose the storyline. Second book that I feel like is an honorable mention during this time was Thank You for My Service, written by Matt Best, and it also says Ross Patterson and Nils Parker. Now, this really seems like a story about Matt Best, so I don't know if Ross Patterson and Nils Parker were like ghostwriters that helped him or what their role in it was. But to me, it was written by Matt Best, narrated by Matt Best. This was a book that, for me, was a bit of a disappointment, and at the same time, exceeded in some areas where I expected it to be good. And the one redeeming factor with this book is it was narrated by Matt Best. I honestly think that if Matt Best had not narrated this book, then it would have been a total flop for me. The big reason, so one of the things that he does constantly throughout this book is he's constantly telling you about his sexual conquests. Now, having served in the military, been around guys with that mindset, I know that's something that they talk about a lot, and as you grow and as you age, you kind of get out of that. But a good bit of the book, he sounds like that high school dude that is trying to make himself look cooler than he is by bragging about, yeah, I lost my virginity when I was 12 to 5 babysitters at the same time. And I've had every single grade school teacher in the school. You know, every girl they meet, they have sex with because they're just like such a stud. That's kind of what he sounds like. He misses sounding like that barely. And I mean, he barely misses sounding like that because he's narrating the book. And you can hear in his voice that he's not bragging and saying, oh, I'm just so studly and so cool. Instead, he's kind of making fun of himself. He's kind of saying, yeah, I was like really immature back then. And that was all I thought about. I mean, that was the end-all, be-all of my life. It's like the old joke. When God created man, and when God created Adam, God told Adam, I'm going to curse you, and I'm going to bless you. And Adam was like, awesome, God, thank you, wow. But what's the blessing? And God said, I'm going to give you 2 brains. And Adam was like, whoa, that's, okay, I can handle it. What's the cursing? God said, I'm only going to give you enough blood to use 1 at a time. And Matt Best comes across as if he's going, yeah, all of my blood was going to one region of my body, and that was where my thoughts resided. So it saved him. Now, my youngest son, who you can go back and see some reviews of this book, I talked to him about his feelings on this book. He was really excited to get this book. This is one of the areas where him and I disagreed about this book. He felt like he was listening to one of his, and he's fresh out of high school. So he felt like he was listening to one of his high school buddies that's constantly bragging. And when they open their mouth to talk, all the guys are just like, yeah, dude, shut up. You've never even kissed a girl, and we all know it. So quit trying to make yourself look cool. He felt like that was how Matt Best came across. To me, he came across someone who was like, yeah, this is what I was like is when I was younger. I grew out of it, kind of making fun of himself. Another turnoff for the book, for me, was the language. I mean, Matt Best can't say, hey, how's it going, without throwing in an equal number of F words. Effing hey, effing how, effing is, effing going, kind of a thing. I mean, it's that part to me. So, young guys, when they first start swearing, they feel like it makes them super cool. And even some older guys, I know some older guys are this way, you know, they just, their existence revolves around swearing. Their identity, their self-identity, they think it makes them look so cool that they can out outswear anyone. That is definitely how Matt Best comes across in this book. He doesn't come across as if the swearing is just a byproduct of his language, something that, you know, is a natural part of his language. He comes across to me as if he's forcing it. He wants everyone to know, hey, I swear a lot, and I want you to know I swear a lot. And so I'm going to make sure that I have an extra amount of swear words in this book. That got really old. I mean, that got really old really super fast for me. Those were the two real knocks on the book for me. The over exposure to his sexual life, which I definitely did not buy that book to get, and the overly excessive swearing. He tells his war stories, but none of his war stories are about the actual battle. They're all about how they handled the after battle, which, having served, I get that. I understand that. And this was another area where Justin and I both felt like the swearing was over the top, ridiculous, and hurt the book. Here, I got and understood what he was doing. He was addressing how you emotionally deal with the after effects of what you've just gone through and what you've just experienced and what you've just done. To someone who's never been there, never experienced that, it's kind of hard to understand. Justin didn't understand what he was doing there. To Justin, it just felt like he was, bragging to make himself sound cool. He does. A lot of what he does in this book makes him sound like he's bragging, especially if you don't understand where he's coming from. I understood where he was coming from with this point. I got it. It's a self-protective, the things that he's talking about doing in there, they're all self-protective measures. I learned that going through counseling when I got out of the Marine Corps, and I went to the VA to go through some counseling for some mental issues I was having from things that I'd done to do the same thing, to mentally prepare myself for the war that we were heading into. So I get that, understand that. That part was okay to me. To Justin, who's never served, never been in a situation where he's gone through and faced what Matt Best has gone through and faced, he didn't understand that. There were parts of this book that, as a veteran, hit me on a really deep emotional level. When he talks about, trying to reintegrate back and brotherhood and things that it's really hard to talk about with people who haven't served, who haven't experienced it. He addressed it really well. He addressed it well enough that despite all of the other factors, I actually contacted my father-in-law, who's a Vietnam veteran, and was like, hey, you'd probably really enjoy this, because he covers some areas that you and I have discussed, amongst ourselves here, and some areas that I know still kind of bother you, all these years and decades later. I'm happy to say that I don't think they bother me. I think I'm past and over them, but it still did have parts of the book that really hit me on a deep emotional level. Didn't have the same effect on Justin, because Justin's never experienced that. He's unable to relate to it in any way, shape, or fashion. A big disappointment for both Justin and I. We were hoping that he would really cover a good bit of the business experience, the experience of coming out in the military and starting your own business and how that got started and all of that. And that was a disappointment with the book. He doesn't cover that like we wanted at all. Overall, it's a book that if you've served, I would recommend it. If you haven't served and you're okay with the excessive swearing and everything else, I would say go ahead and listen to it. But realize before you start listening to it, there's a lot in this book that you're not going to relate to. There's a lot in this book that you're not going to get and you're not going to understand. If you have family members or friends who are serving, it might help you to better understand them and their mindset, especially as they try to reintegrate themselves from the military to civilian life. I was very, very fortunate when I got out of the Marine Corps that my soon-to-be back then and now current father-in-law was someone who had served, was someone who could look at me and recognize, hey, you're a little messed up in the head right now. You need a bit of help. I didn't see it in myself. I felt like I was perfectly fine, perfectly normal. Years later, I discovered that I really scared and freaked out a lot of people because of the way my mannerisms and stuff were. But I had that father-in-law who I respected because I know his experience was a lot worse than mine. He was a combat vet from Nam. He saw things I never saw. He experienced things I never saw. He went through the whole America turning against him thing, which is definitely not something I have ever experienced in my life. So when he came to me and said, hey, you need to go to counseling, you need help, I listened. I got the counseling, I got the help, and I'm grateful for that. If you have someone that you know and you love who's seems to be struggling with stuff, a book like this is not going to, it's not going to help you to understand their experiences or what they're going through. It just can't do that. But it may help you to see, okay, this is kind of an idea of the environment that he's in. He is surrounded by a lot of guys who all think and act this way. So when he comes home and he thinks and acts this way, this is the environment he's coming out of. The aftermath of the battles, when Matt is describing those, you know, those are things that men do to help them deal with what they've just gone through. And as a civilian who's never experienced that sounds horrific, and that doesn't sound funny at all. It's a kind of dark humor that even police officers and firemen use, maybe not to that extreme level that Matt Best did, but still, you know, they'll get it, and so it may help you to understand. May not. Could be wrong on that one. Don't know. Either way, I'm back. I'm going to post next week about Kelcade's new book to let you know, did he hit the mark and live up to his expectations? Or do we wish he'd have stuck with his first series? And can't wait to share that with you, but gonna have to. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you like my channel, subscribe, turn on notifications. Questions, comments, feedback, please use the comment section. That's what it's there for. But most importantly, no matter what else you do today, make sure that today you listen to at least one really good audiobook. And in certain situations, I do recommend Matt Best. Thank you for my service. Have a good one.